This is a counterfeit Super Nintendo, and at first glance you might think, well yeah, look at Mario and Yoshi, they look so strange. But actually that's what the real box looked like too. This is just what Mario and Yoshi looked like in Super Mario RPG. And the console looks strange too. Well, North America actually got a cost-reduced version of the Super Nintendo, and this is the guy. This is what it looks like. In fact, this is a real one. This new style Super Nintendo didn't sell as well as the original ones, and as long as I've been collecting, they've always cost quite a bit more. So a morally lacking business person somewhere decided they would counterfeit new style Super Nintendo systems. These things flooded eBay in about 2005. I actually got this for free from an eBay seller who was selling them and had this one returned to him. I don't think he even realized his stock was counterfeit until that happened. Even if you know what a real boxed one of these looks like, it's going to be hard to tell at a glance. There's nothing that shouts fake straight away. But once you do start looking closely, there's strange things going on around the place. It's like they did photocopy it, but then they just stuck new images over the top of the old ones. There's some weird doubling around here. Mario's moustache has ghosting around it. There's some weird formatting with grey boxes around the text here. Other than the generally poor print quality, the sides are all pretty accurate. The back has the most obvious issues, the biggest one being that there's supposed to be a hole cut out of the box here so that you could read the serial number off the console. And there are a lot of formatting and spelling issues. Customer, wit this product, and serial numbre. There are a few more text issues scattered throughout, even spelling Nintendo wrong. The text formatting itself is slightly different, and the background blacks don't match each other. You can see where the images start and finish in here. This might be the first counterfeit system to damage the resale value of a real console. eBay made it look like these things were plentiful, and collectors who knew about the fakes would be hesitant to buy the real systems just in case. Once you get inside the box, the quality drops off dramatically. A lot of people would know something is up now, but the attention to detail is still pretty impressive. It comes with two controllers, which are very bad quality, but do have all the details of an original controller, although no Nintendo logo on the connector. Putting the controller next to the real one, obviously this one looks worse, but if you didn't have this one to compare to, you might believe it. A power adapter, which really isn't trying to copy the original one, other than saying Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The sticker doesn't fit on it properly, and it's already starting to break. I've only used it a couple of times. And very generic RF and AV cables. The RF switch even says SG RF unit on it. I guess they used the same casing for Sega Genesis ones. It actually comes with original looking paperwork. A Nintendo Power registration form. The text's a little bit fuzzy, but it's pretty convincing. Consumer information booklet. The paper feels right. The printing's a little bit off, but it's really not bad at all. And the console construction booklet, which is also a pretty high quality copy of the original. Having this paperwork in there was pretty clever. Who would suspect that a console that comes with a Nintendo Power subscription form would be a fake? The biggest difference you'll be able to tell if you have only got the console and you're worried it might be a fake is that the power switch and the reset button are smooth. On the real unit, they've got textured plastic. Also on mine, I can just pull the power switch off like that. It doesn't really clip in properly. You can't do that on the real one. The reason why this system is so convincing is that they actually made a cast of a real one for the molds. You can tell because the sharp details on the real one are a lot less defined on the counterfeit. It's like doing a photocopy. It's not quite as good as the original. The cartridge slot's a lot stiffer on the fake one too. It almost doesn't want to give you your finger back. This one's just going to open and close really easily. And inside the cartridge flap, it's actually purple. The real one's the same color as the case on the inside. The fake one does have a Nintendo Service sticker on it, although it's pretty poor quality. On the back, the fake labels are actually really convincing, only missing the model number for the label and where the console was made. Other than that, it's just marginal font differences, which I wouldn't be able to pick if it was on its own, but I would guess that they all have the same serial number. The screws that hold the consoles together are also different. The real console uses Nintendo's security screws, whereas the fake one uses Phillips head screws. Once we get inside, we can see there's no RF shielding, that's the metal stuff on the real one, so the FCC compliance is a lie, and there's a tiny heatsink on the voltage regulator. The real one has a huge heatsink. I guess aluminium is kind of expensive. Underneath the RF shielding, the real one's obviously of better quality. This is the motherboard from an early Super Nintendo. It has 2 graphics chips, 2 audio chips, and 1 CPU. By this time, Nintendo had integrated the CPU and graphics chips into this big chip, and only had 1 audio chip. I originally thought these 3 chips would be pirate versions of the CPU and graphics chips in the early Super Nintendos, but these don't have the same wiring. They're actually completely different chips. Kind of half guessing, I'd say this is the graphics chip, this is the CPU, and this one's for audio, which means we've got graphics memory in these 2 chips, system memory here, and audio memory. There's Sony, Epson, Winbond, Mitsubishi, Toshiba. It's a party in here, everyone's invited. The fact that all these memory chips have different brands means that they've taken these from scrap boards. They're secondhand. The 2 posts that the cartridge slot screws to are actually at different heights. This one's correct, but this one's too low. The cartridge port's actually broken because of it. This area in here is interesting though. 50H and 60H. That means 50 Hz and 60 Hz. It's the number of times the screen refreshes every second. This is called a jumper setting. At the moment, the 60 Hz side has a solder blob bridging it. If I clear that and bridge the 50 Hz side, then it'll run at 50 Hz instead. Some countries like Australia and a lot of Europe required 50 Hz, while USA and Japan and a few other countries required 60 Hz. Official Nintendo consoles used different motherboards for each region, so they didn't have any of these options on them. There's actually another one up the back here. This one's not labeled, but I can tell that it's for switching between PAL and NTSC color format. formats. However, the components for PAL aren't here, so that one won't work. I'm soldering some wires to the 5060 jumpers so that I can control them with a switch from outside the console. I want to play with that later. As far as gameplay goes, yeah, they're the same. It works perfectly fine. The audio is a little bit crackly though. Inside the cartridge slot of a genuine North American Super Nintendo, there are a couple of tabs which stop you from putting Japanese games into the slot. This console was made without those, so Japanese games should plug straight in and work. This system also doesn't have a security chip, so some PAL games will work as well. But some PAL games check for the refresh rate, so that's where that jumper comes in. If I flick this switch, oh, I lose colour. That's interesting. I'm going to try switching that other jumper, even though those components are missing. Nah, I guess those components are required to get colour on 50 Hz. But the 5060 jumper will still help me to play some games that check for the refresh rate. Most games only do a check when you first turn it on, and if it's the wrong refresh rate, you get a screen like this. Aw, they're in jail. But if I switch the refresh rate to 50 Hz and turn the console off and on, the game starts up, and I can switch it back to 60 afterwards to get the colour back. But I don't actually use this console at all, so I'm just going to leave the jumper permanently on 60. I wonder if this will work. It does! Oh, the reset button doesn't work, but the original top half does fit on the bottom half of the Pirate console. And there it is, the most accurate counterfeit console I've ever seen. I'm a massive video game collector and I'm always buying interesting stuff. If you'd like to see everything that I get, you can join me on Floatplane for $1 a month. The link's in the description, I'll see you there.